Hi, I'm Paul, and in this video I'm going to be explaining the rules to the game of Hellas using Tabletop Simulator. So this tutorial should be applicable to using the Tabletop Simulator version as well as to using the physical copy. So if you have a physical copy, then some of the pieces are going to look different, but basically it's the same game. I'm going to be mostly explaining rules. So if you don't know how to use Tabletop Simulator, then you should watch a tutorial on how to use the basic mechanics of that software. But here I'm going to be talking about rules so that anybody who plays any version of this game can get started. So the game of Hellas takes place in the 5th and 4th centuries BC in ancient Greece. Each player is going to be playing as an ancient Greek city-state trying to dominate Greek culture. One player will also be playing as the Persian expedition into Greece, trying to dominate Greek culture from the outside. So each city-state is going to have advantages and disadvantages. It's a very asymmetric game, but you're going to want to use all of the assets at your disposal to get an upper hand on your opponents and dominate Greek culture. So the winner of this game may or may not be the player who is the most militarily successful, and the winner of this game may or may not be the player who has the biggest economy, but the winner of the game definitely will be the player who has the greatest cultural influence. That's what we're fighting for in this game, and it is important not to forget that and not be distracted by other aspects of the game. So the way that we measure cultural influence is on this green circle right here, which encompasses the map. This is called the culture wheel. The culture wheel has 90 spaces, and at the end of the game, whoever controls the most spaces on the culture wheel is going to win. Regardless of how many cities they have, regardless of how many battles they've won, whoever has the most spaces on the culture wheel is going to win the game. So you'll notice that there are these 6 tokens on the culture wheel. Each token has 2 colors. The colors indicate which factions share the culture token. So each faction or each player is going to share 2 culture tokens with 2 other players. So here you can see the Theban player, which is white, has a culture token here and here. They share this culture token with the Corinthian player, who's black, and this culture token with the Persian player, which is green. And during the game, you are going to want to move the borders of your cultural influence as far away from each other as you can. And this shows you that you have expanded your cultural influence. You now control a greater portion of ancient Greek culture. And that comes at the expense of your cultural neighbors. And so during this game, you're going to find ways to move your culture tokens as far away from each other as you possibly can, because this tells you how much of the culture wheel you control. At the end of the game, we are going to count whose culture tokens are furthest away from each other, and whoever has their 2 culture tokens furthest away from each other wins the game. And it's very important to keep this in mind because we're going to get distracted by battles, by economy, and things like that. But at the end of the day, the player who has the greatest cultural influence is going to win. Now, you'll also notice that there are these symbols on the culture wheel, and these symbols represent cultural advantages. Over here, you can see that each player has cards with numbers that correlate to those symbols on the culture wheel, and those are cultural advantages that the players have and can use during the game, and they're very influential, they're very powerful, and if you are able to move one of your culture tokens past one of these symbols, which previously belonged to another player, then you can actually steal it from them. As you can see that the Theban player succeeded in moving their culture token past this symbol right here, and so they were able to steal this cultural advantage. It's also important to see that one color is on top. So in this case, the green color is on top. That indicates that the Persian player controls the space which this culture token occupies. So this space belongs to the Persian player, this space belongs to the Persian player, as well as this one, but this one now belongs to the Theban, and so on. So each player is going to have one color, their color on top of one culture token, and the other player on top of the other culture token. So the culture wheel is mostly symmetrical, and And your job is going to be to move your culture tokens as far away from each other as you can so that you can expand your cultural influence and by the end of the game have the greatest cultural influence and therefore win. So the question is, when does the game end? Well, the game ends at the end of the round when this deck runs out right here. This deck right here, these are schools, as in schools of thought, but also physical academies like Plato's Academy. And the idea is that once 18 of them have been established, ancient Greek culture has evolved to its pinnacle. And so once all of these cards are gone, because different players have established enough schools. So for example, right here, this is the Corinthian player. The Corinthian player has 3 schools established, and all of these all the players have succeeded in establishing several of these schools, and this deck runs out, then it shows you that ancient Greek culture has become basically what we know it as today. And at that point, we're going to want to know who has had the greatest influence on Greek culture, and we're going to measure that based on the culture wheel according to the rules that I explained just a second ago. Now, note that the game doesn't end as soon as this deck runs out, but at the end of the round in which this deck runs out. So let's talk about what a round is. This game is going to consist of several rounds. It's an unknown number, which depends on how quickly players are able to establish schools. Each round is going to begin with income. And the rules for income are very simple, and they're going to be the same every single round. At the beginning of the round, during income, you are going to gain 1 coin from this pouch right here for each city and for each trade route which you have. At the beginning of the game, each player has either 1 city or 2 cities, but then later on you're going to be able to establish more cities and build some trade routes. And the more cities and more trade routes you have, the more coins you're going to get during income each round. So if I have 1 city, then during income, I get 1 coin. But if I have, say, 2 cities and 2 trade routes, then during income, I get 4 coins. If I had 5 cities and 3 trade routes, then I would get 8 coins during income. So the rules for income are the same every single round, and your income always depends on how many cities and trade routes you have. After income comes the action phase, which is going to take up about 98% of this game. The action phase always begins with the Persian player. And then we move clockwise around the table, around the culture wheel. So it goes Persia, Sparta, Argos, Athens, Corinth, Thebes, and then Persia goes again. On your turn, you can perform 1 action. And then it's the next player's turn. And they perform 1 action. And then goes Argos, and they perform 1 action, and then Athens performs 1 action, and so on. There are 2 types of actions that you can play during a round. On your turn, you can play a city action, or you can play a citizen action. Each card, your cities and your citizens, can be activated once per round. And when you choose to activate a card, you flip it like this, and then you perform the action, you do the thing that you want to do with a city, and then it's the next person's turn. And so the gameplay, for the most part, is going to be quite quick. Each player is going to do 1 thing, and they're going to flip the card, which they used to do that thing, and then it's going to be the next player's turn. And after a while, going around in the circle, each player will have flipped all of the cards that are able to perform actions, and they will say on their next turn, I'm ending actions because I have nothing left to do. Or maybe because I have nothing left that I want to do. You don't always have to activate every single card that you have every round. So either if I want to end actions or if I have no actions left to perform, then I say I end actions. And then all the other players continue playing actions until everybody has ended actions. And at that point, everybody flips over their cards, preparing for the next round. And as the next round begins, we all receive income simultaneously. and we gain coins equal to the number of cities plus trade routes which we own. So that's going to be the basic gameplay of this game, and we're just going to repeat that process until all of the schools have run out. So at the beginning of the game, a round is going to be quite quick because we don't have very many actions to perform. But as we grow our empires, we'll have more and more to do, and therefore the rounds are going to get longer and longer because we're going to be doing more different things on each round because we're going to have more cities and more citizens to activate. Okay, let's talk about what cities and citizens can do. First, we can talk about cities. So what is it exactly that I'm doing when I activate a city on my turn? When you activate a city, then you're calling on a large portion of your empire's population to do a simple but powerful and large service to your empire. Expanding your borders or improving the quality of your military or something big like that. But in the context of the game, when you activate a city, what you're doing is you are collecting one card from the stock right here. So you can see that there are lots of different cards which you can collect, and when you activate your city, then you can take one of these. So you could take, for example, a military unit. So on your turn, you flip your city, and you say, I'm using my city to gain a military unit. Up here in the corner, you can see the cost. How much does it cost to gain that card? Well, to gain a military unit, it actually costs 0 coins. So all I have to do to get a military unit is, on my turn, flip a city and say, I am gaining a military unit. When you get a military unit, then you immediately put it in one of your navies, led by an admiral, or in one of your armies, led by a general. So let's put it in my army right here. And so far I don't have a general leading that army, but when I do have a general leading that army, then my military unit is going to help the general in battle. And so you can use your city to expand your army. That's one of the simplest things that you can do with a city. And that's all. And now it's the next person's turn. So what is Sparta going to do? Sparta is also going to activate their city to gain a card from the stock over here. That's what cities do. They gain cards from the stock over here. But Sparta is going to do something different. Sparta is going to gain a wall. So let's talk about what a wall does. When you gain a wall, then you can put it somewhere in the corner of your tableau over here. And notice that, first of all, a wall costs 1 coin. So I'm going to take a coin from my pouch, and I'm going to return it here. So at the beginning of the game, I started with 8 coins. Now I just have 7. And you'll also notice that a wall has this symbol right here. This is the symbol of a pawn, and that indicates that the wall has a corresponding figure somewhere on the map. And that figure is going to be in the form of a coin. And so basically, this coin tells me which wall is that, which city is that wall protecting? And the answer is that I'm putting it around the city of Sparta. So every time you collect a wall by activating one of your cities, then you place that wall under one of your existing city figures on the map. And so everybody knows how well protected each of your cities are. Otherwise, walls are very similar to military units. They're going to help you in combat later on in the game. Now, it's important to know that there is no limit to how many walls you can build during a round. As long as you have many cities to activate, you can build as many walls as you want. There's also no limit to how many walls you can have under a particular city. I could surround Sparta with 10 walls if I wanted, making Sparta almost impossible to conquer. So I can activate my city to gain a military unit, or I could activate a city to gain a wall. What else can I do? Now it's the Argives player's turn, and he's going to activate a city to gain, let's do a trade route now. To gain a trade route. Sorry, I just grabbed the whole deck, just one. There. So I'm going to put this next to my mat here, and let's look at how much this card costs. Okay, it costs 3 coins. So there we go, 3 coins, and we're going to bring this over here, spending 3 coins. So I started with 8. Now I just have 5, but let's see what this does. So first of all, this symbol shows me that this is a card which generates income. We already know that. Trade routes and cities generate income. That means that next round, I'm not going to get 2 coins for income, but I'm going to get 3 coins for income. And then this card also has a pawn symbol, which shows that it has a corresponding figure somewhere on the map. When I obtain a card which has a corresponding figure somewhere on the map, then I need to immediately place it somewhere. So I'm going to place it here, adjacent to my city. So the rules for deploying trade routes are that you can play a trade route at any unoccupied sea territory adjacent to one of your existing cities or trade routes. So it's actually interesting that Sparta, for example, can't, at the beginning of the game, build a trade route because there are no unoccupied sea territories which are adjacent to a city or a trade route which Sparta controls. And if you look at the Argive situation, Argos starts with 2 cities, and they can place their trade route here, adjacent to Argos, or here, adjacent to Miletus, or also here, adjacent to Miletus. And once you build a trade route there, then nobody else can build a trade route there. So Argos has decided that on their first turn they're going to build a trade route. So they spend 3 coins, and then they find a place on the map where they can place their figure. If you have no place to play a figure, the figure of the trade route, or any other card which requires you to put a pawn down on the map, then you actually cannot gain that card using a city. Okay, let's talk about what else you can do with a city. So, now the Athenian player flips their city to gain a citizen. So when you gain a citizen, as you can see, you're going to spend 3 coins, just like the other player spent 3 coins to gain a trade route. But you can choose from these different citizens based on what their statistics are. And each citizen is going to benefit you in a different way at a different point in the game. And if you don't like any of these 3 citizens, then you can also take your chances and choose a random citizen. So the Athenian player is going to take a random citizen, and they're going to flip it and immediately appoint it. So whenever you gain a citizen using your city, then you appoint the citizen to one of 6 positions immediately. They can be a philosopher, an artist, a statesman, a general, an admiral, or a demagogue. So this Artemisia, this citizen right here, is going to be a great statesman. So the lower number, the better. And this is the skill set of that particular citizen. So I'm going to make Artemisia a statesman. When I obtain a citizen, I immediately appoint it, and I flip it as if it's activated. So I can't use it until the next round. All right. What else can I do with a city? Well, I can activate a city to gain military tradition. This means that I'm training my soldiers and I'm teaching my faction that war is important. This is one of the more expensive cards. It costs 5. There are many cultural advantages which are going to help me purchase this card, and I'll explain that in a second. But right now, basically you need to spend 5 coins to be able to purchase military tradition. So I'm going to get 5 coins together there, and there. I'm going to gain military tradition. This is a battle card which I place in my battle deck right here. So at the beginning of the game, you start with 6 battle cards. Some of them are hits, some of them are misses. And what you do when you purchase military tradition is you improve your battle deck, basically improving all of your fighting cards for the rest of the game. This improves the quality of your military. So it's important to have a large quantity in your military, but also a good quality. So you improve the quality of your of your military by purchasing military tradition, which basically functions as a double hit card. And so it's like improving your dice roll when you're fighting. So I'll explain that when I explain combat. But the last card now, which you can purchase by activating your city, is another city. So this is very important to remember. The way that you build cities is by activating cities on your turn. So on the Theban turn, they activate a city to purchase a city, which costs 6 coins. And so they spend 6 coins, which is a lot of money. And what does this do? How is that helpful? Well, first of all, a city is a card which is able to perform actions. And I've basically explained most of the things that you can do, most of the actions that you can perform with your city. And as you can see, it's extremely powerful. In fact, all of the cards that you see in the stock here can only be accessed by activating cities. You cannot get a citizen, for example, any other way than by activating a city. So cities are extremely powerful. This is how you expand the might of your empire. So cities are cards which can perform actions. By the way, you can also see that citizens are cards which can perform actions. So those 2 cards. Cities are also cards which generate an income. And we remember that there are only 2 cards which generate income, cities and trade routes. And cities also have figures, corresponding figures on the map. So this is what a city looks like, what the figure of a city looks like. And the rules for deploying cities are very similar to the rules for deploying trade routes. You place a city in an unoccupied land territory adjacent to one of your existing trade routes or one of your existing cities. And so the Theban player actually at the beginning of the game only has one place where they can play a city, and that is here in Boeotia. And then later, as they build a trade route or another city, then they're going to have more and more options as to where to place a city. But cities are so powerful that even though they're expensive and sometimes they can be difficult to place down on the map, the rule of thumb is that any time you are able to build a city, you probably should, because they are so powerful. Now remember that when you gain a city, using a city, then you gain it as if activated, and you can't use it until the next round. And so there are 2 final things that you can do with your city on your turn. If none of these cards here are interesting to you, then you can use a city, flip it on your turn, to collect taxes from that city. And what that means is that you gain a coin, basically, instead of gaining a card. So now the Persian player doesn't have 8 coins, but 9 coins. So generally, cards, all of these cards are more valuable than a single coin. For example, the only way that you can gain military units in this game is by activating cities. There are other ways to get coins, like for example during income. But the only way to get any of these cards is by activating cities. So generally, it will be more intelligent to gain a card rather than collect taxes. But there will be points in this game where there's going to be something really interesting that you want to do, and you need extra money to be able to do it. And so you can activate your city to collect taxes and gain 1 coin. The final thing that you can do when you activate a city is you can attack. Now, this is extremely important to remember. During the game, the way that you initiate combat is by activating a city. It's a bureaucratic and political decision to attack another player. And so, for example, I could have a general right here, but if I don't have an available city to activate on my turn, then I actually won't be able to attack the yellow player until next round. But if I did, then the way that I would initiate combat here is not by activating a general, but by activating one of my cities. So I would flip it and I would say, I am attacking the yellow player right here. And by doing so, I would initiate combat, which is something that I'm going to be explaining towards the end of the game. But right now, it is very important for everybody to remember the way that you initiate combat in the game of Hellas is by activating a city and using this ability right here. So if you want to initiate combat, then you need to remember to leave one of your cities unactivated. So those are all of the things that you can do with your city. You can gain a military unit, build a wall, gain military tradition to improve the quality of your army, gain a citizen, either a revealed citizen or a random citizen, which you immediately appoint to one of 6 positions, but you gain it as if activated. Same with a city. When you gain a city, then you place down a figure somewhere on the map, and you gain this city as if activated. You can gain a trade route, and you place this trade route, the figure of the trade route, somewhere on the map, and that's going to help you generate more income later on. You could also activate a city to attack somebody in a territory which you share with them. Or you can activate a city to collect taxes, in other words, gain one single coin. So those are all of the things that you can do with a city. Now I'm going to explain all the things that you can do with your citizens. What does it look like when on your turn, instead of activating a city, you choose to activate a citizen? And then I'm going to explain how combat works. And at that point, you will have all of the rules that you need to be able to play this game. So at the beginning of the game, each player is going to get 8 coins, 1 city, and 2 citizens, with the exception of the Persian player, who gains 2 cities and 1 citizen, and the exception of the Argive player, who also gains 2 cities and 1 citizen. And immediately you are going to appoint these citizens into different positions based on what their abilities are and also what your needs are. Each citizen has different abilities and plays a different role. Leonidas is a great general, and so I'm going to appoint him as a general. As soon as I do so, then I have to place this general figure somewhere on the map. And the rules for that is that I place my generals and my admirals, which also have figures, somewhere where I have a city. So I'm going to place my general in Sparta. And now if I ever gain any military units that join Leonidas, then I'll remember that they're present in his army. And whenever I move Leonidas, then I'm also moving all of the military units which came with him. And let's see, I also have this character right here, whom I'm going to make a demagogue, like that, Cleomenes. So on my turn, I may activate a city, or I could activate a citizen. Now, each citizen has 2 abilities. Cities have many abilities. They can gain any card from the stock. But each citizen only has 2 abilities. And that depends on what position they're in. So if my citizen is a general, they have 1 free ability and 1 paid ability. In fact, each citizen type has 1 free ability and 1 paid ability. So let's talk about what all of these free abilities that any one of my citizens could use, depending on their position, when I choose to activate them on their turn. So the general's ability is movement. When I activate my general by flipping him, just like a city, then I get to move his piece 1 space. Now, there's only 1 space to move this from Sparta, and that's to Laconia. And if we look, then you'll notice that this is a brown arrow, which signifies that generals move on land. There's one exception to this. Generals can move on land to any land territory, but they can also move to a sea territory if I occupy it with an admiral or a trade route. So generals can move on sea. It's risky because they could drown if somebody were to attack me there and destroy my naval presence. But technically it is possible to move generals on sea. So the brown arrow indicates that I can move this number of spaces on land territory or on sea territory if I occupy it with an admiral or a trade route. If this were an admiral, then I could flip it to move it one space on a sea territory, any sea territory. And also I can move admirals to land if I occupy the land territory with a general or a city. So admirals move on sea and they fight on sea, but they can also move across land if I have a city or a general there. And generals move on land and fight on land, but they can also move to sea if I have an admiral or a trade route there. Let's see what the free abilities of statesmen and demagogues are. Demagogues, when I choose to activate them and use their free ability, then I can gain 1 coin, just as if I were collecting taxes with my city. And with statesmen, it's the same. If Cleomenes were a statesman, regardless of what his abilities are, he would actually be a very bad statesman because he has very high leadership the numbers are high, but it's very poor leadership and poor wisdom. So he would be a bad statesman, but regardless, he would be able to use this free ability to gain a coin, just as if he were a demagogue. So generals and admirals have mostly the same ability. Statesmen and demagogues have exactly the same free ability. And artists and philosophers have an interesting and very important ability. And that is that you can activate your artist for free to move one of your culture tokens one space. So I'm the Spartan player, so I'm going to choose one of these Spartan tokens and move it one space. Now, if I have an artist from the beginning of the game, then I could be using that free ability every single round to slowly move my culture token past this cultural advantage right here and steal it for myself. And also that might come in handy at the end of the game, and I might win thanks to having activated an artist for free many times. Philosophers have the exact same free ability. So those are free abilities. On my turn, I can activate a city and gain a card from the stock, or I can activate the free ability of one of my citizens to gain a coin, move a culture token, or move one of my navies or one of my generals, my armies, depending on whether I'm activating a general or an admiral. And you remember the rules for moving on land and moving on sea. Now let's talk about the paid abilities. Now these are a lot more powerful and they're also a lot more expensive. So each position or each type of citizen requires a different skill for its cost. So at the beginning, I actually appointed Cleomenes as a demagogue. How much would it cost to activate him to use his special paid ability? Well, the answer is it would cost whatever his zeal is. So here you can see the cost is zeal, and that is 1. That's why the lower numbers are better. So Cleomenes is a great demagogue. And if I activate him, I have to spend 1 coin. But I'm happy to do that because the ability is extremely powerful. What is this special ability that he has? This symbol tells you that the demagogue's special ability is that I can immediately play 3 actions. So during this game, on your turn, you can, under normal circumstances, activate 1 single card. But if you have a demagogue, then you can speed that process up by activating the demagogue and spending 1 coin or more coins if it's a lower quality demagogue to use the special ability. And after you've flipped your demagogue, then you can flip 3 other cards simultaneously before the next player's turn. So if I were playing as Sparta and I had multiple cities and also a free general who hadn't been activated yet, then I could, on my turn, say I'm activating my demagogue, that's my turn. I'm using a special ability, so I'm paying 1 coin. And now I have 3 actions which I can play simultaneously. And then I activate a city to gain a military unit, which I put in Leonidas' army. And then I activate Leonidas to use his free ability and move him 1 space. And then I activate another city to attack my enemy right here. So under normal circumstances, all of that would take a long time because I can only do 1 action per turn. The demagogue's special ability allows me to perform 3 actions at once. Now, obviously, in a real game, if I had 3 city cards, then I would need to have 3 city figures on the map. So we can pretend that maybe earlier I had built cities here and here. So that's a demagogue. So when you appoint a citizen as a demagogue, then he has 2 abilities. He can, for free, gain a coin, or as a paid ability, he can perform 3 actions simultaneously before the next person's turn. He can only do one of these things per round because you can only activate him once per round. What is the statesman's special ability? Now, a statesman is more expensive. A statesman is going to cost whatever the citizens' leadership plus wisdom is, their helmet plus their scroll. So Cleomenes has a total of 6. And so in order to activate this ability, I would have to pay 6 coins, which is extremely expensive. And immediately you can see why it's important to, during this game, to appoint your citizens well so that you have the right skilled citizens in the right place. So Cleomenes would not be a good statesman. He could still use the free ability whenever he wanted, but I would probably never use him for a special ability. But maybe I had a great statesman and I did want to use this ability. What would it do? Well, right here you can see a flip 3 cities. So if I chose to spend 6 coins to use this citizen, my statesman, and his special ability, oh, wait. Yes, I barely have 6 coins and I want to spend it all to use this amazing special ability. What does it do? I get to flip 3 cities. Boom, boom, boom. And that's exactly what it means. So you can effectively double the capacity for your city actions during the round. So normally you can only activate each card once per round. Using a statesman, you can actually recharge your city so that you can use them again. So that was my turn right there. I activated my statesman using a special ability instead of getting a coin. And now it's the next player's turn, and I have to wait until everybody's done. And then on my next turn, I get to use my city to do something interesting. Well, I don't have any money, so probably I would get some coin, or I would do something for free. So that's what the statesman's special ability is. Now let's go down here and talk about admirals and generals. Admiral's special ability is extremely simple. When you have an admiral, then of course that admiral has a piece somewhere on the map, and you choose to activate your admiral and say, I'm using a special ability. That means that I have to pay whatever his leadership is. Well, Cleomenes actually isn't a very good admiral. I would have to spend 3 coins for that, which I don't actually have. But if we imagine that he was a better admiral, then I just paid, for example, 1 coin, then I could do that. And then I would get this special ability, which is that I get to move 2 sea territories. And it still applies that I could move across land if I had presence there. So I can't move, for example, 1, 2, because I don't occupy Sicily. But I could move, and this would be much more powerful, 1, 2. And so as you can see, I just got halfway across the map in 1 round by using the admiral's special ability, which if I have a skillful admiral is going to be actually very cheap. And so this can be great to surprise attack my enemies and destroy their trade routes, for example. So I'm almost to the Argive trade route. So that's very simple. Admirals can move more quickly if you pay a little bit of extra coin. Now let's talk about generals. Generals actually have basically the same thing, except that they also, in addition to moving 2 spaces because they're more expensive, they also get to move a culture token 2 spaces. So because it's a big event that Leonidas took his 300 Spartans very quickly to face the Persian force. And so I spend, in this case, 3 coins because Leonidas is a great general. I spend 3 coins to be able to move one of my culture tokens 2 spaces, and also to be able to move my general 2 spaces. Boom, boom, and attack Corinth, which is a huge surprise because the Corinthian player didn't know that I was actually within range to attack him. Now it's interesting that technically, if I had a demagogue and also a general and enough money, then I could use my demagogue to boost my army, move my general 2 spaces if I spent enough money, and then attack somebody completely unexpectedly quite far away. And so those are, we've described demagogues, statesmen, admirals, and generals. Now let's talk about the most important citizens in this game. Philosophers. Now it's interesting that I've explained 90% of the rules so far, but I actually haven't told you how to get those all-important schools. Well, the way you do that is by having a good philosopher. And so Cleomenes is not a good philosopher. He would cost 3 to be able to use the special ability. But what does this special ability do? Simply, I gain a school. So if he was Plato, for example, then he could establish Plato's Academy. And now he's activated. I wait till the end of the round, and then next round I could actually do that again instead of moving one of my culture tokens 1 space. Okay, but what does this school actually do besides hasten the end of the game? Well, another thing that the school does is it improves the quality of my artists. So artists are also one of the more expensive cards to activate. This Cleomenes actually isn't a bad artist. He would only cost 4 to activate his special ability. And what does that special ability do? Well, I get to move one of my culture tokens X spaces. And X equals the number of academies that I have. The number of schools that I have times the number of Greek cities that I have. What's a Greek city? Well, it's any city built on a yellow territory. Those are Greek cities. And if I want to expand my cultural influence, I need to have presence in the Greek-speaking world. So Sparta actually has significant presence in the Greek-speaking world. So I have 3 Greek cities times 1 school. So I would spend this many coins to be able to move one of my culture tokens 1 times 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. Now, honestly, moving a culture token 3 spaces probably isn't worth 3 coins. Maybe it is, probably not. I could actually move my culture token 1 space for free. That would probably be better. But if I had, say, 3 schools and 3 Greek-speaking cities, then I could move a culture token 9 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And all of a sudden I've stolen these cultural advantages, which I can then use for myself. I'll explain that in a second. And I have by far the greatest cultural influence in the game. So the way that you win this game is by having the best philosophers and the best artists. Your philosophers are going to be creating schools, and then your artists are going to use those schools as well as your Greek cities to expand your cultural influence by far more than anything else in the entire game. The problem is that artists are expensive and they require Greek-speaking cities. And so as soon as I've expanded my cultural influence to this degree, then my neighbors are going to see that I'm about to win the game and they're going to start attacking me. So this is a dangerous position to be in. It's risky, and you need to time when you invest in culture very well so that you don't get destroyed by your neighbors. At the same time, you need to be watching all the other players and watch how they use their artists, because once they start using their artists to gain 16 culture squares, spaces on the culture wheel at a time, then you know your time is running out. And so those are all of the rules concerning the actions that you can play on your turn. So in the rest of this tutorial, I'm going to be explaining combat, and then I'll just give a summary of how the game is played. But right now, basically, you have all of the rules that you need, except for combat, to be able to play. Okay, so how does combat work? Well, we know how combat begins. It begins when you, on your turn, activate one of your cities to use the attack ability. So let's say that the Spartan player hasn't activated all of their cards yet, and chooses to, on their turn, flip a city to attack a player at a territory which they share with that player. Now, this could be a sea territory, and it could also be a land territory. But it has to be a territory which I share with another player. So I'm going to choose to attack the Corinthian player here in this territory which I share with them in Corinth. When we do so, then we're going to take all of the cards which are present in that territory. So Sparta has 2 cards present, and Corinth over here has 1 card present. You know that your card is present in that territory if it has a piece there, or if it's a military unit which belongs to a general which is present in that territory. So Leonidas and his single military unit are going to attack the city of Corinth. The combat is going to involve 3 phases. And each phase is going to begin with the attacking player. The first phase is choosing sides. In choosing sides, the attacking player chooses whom they are attacking in that territory. Now, there's only one player whom I can attack in that territory, so the Spartan player says, I am attacking Corinth. But if another player had presence in that territory, then we would go clockwise around the culture wheel, and they would then choose, are you going to be joining the attacker, Sparta, or the defender, Corinth? And Athens says, I will be joining the defender, Corinth. And so maybe they have a general, for example, also present. So now it's the Athenian general and the Corinthian city against the Spartan general and its military unit. And then Corinth doesn't have a choice because they were targeted, and so they are the defender. So choosing sides. After choosing sides, then everybody has been divided into 2 sides. They're either on the attacking side or the defending side. And we move on to inflicting casualties. During inflicting casualties, we again start with the attacking player and go around the culture wheel. And each player draws from their battle deck. First they shuffle, and then they draw from the battle deck a number of cards equal to how many units they have present in the territory. So I have 2 units, so I'm going to draw 2 battle cards. And I drew a hit and a miss. And I choose whom I am going to distribute these each one of my hits to. So if I drew 4 hits, for example, then I would say I'm going to hit Corinth with 3 hits and inflict 1 casualty on Athens. So in this case, I only have 1 hit, so I get to choose if I want to hit the Athenian general or the Corinthian city. And I say I'm hitting Corinth. And so Corinth is going to put their card in a pile of casualties over here. So you can make that pile wherever you want, but at the end of inflicting casualties, we're going to have 2 piles of casualties, a pile of defending casualties and a pile of attacking casualties. And then we go clockwise around. So now Athens also shuffles their, shuffles their battle deck, and they draw 1 card because they have 1 card present, 1 unit present, and they hit. And they have to hit somebody on the attacking side, so of course they hit Sparta. But Sparta, because they have multiple cards which they can take as casualties, get to choose which one they want to lose. And so, of course, they choose to lose the much cheaper military unit. And so that goes on the casualty pile over here. And then lastly, the Corinthian player shuffles their battle deck, and they also draw one battle card, because at the beginning of this battle, they had 1 unit involved in combat. And so they draw a hit, and of course they hit the Spartan player who's attacking, and so the Spartan player has to lose another casualty. And so at the end of this battle, there were many hits dealt, and so the Corinthian player lost their city, and the Spartan player lost their military unit and also their general. So that's the end of the inflicting casualties round. And then lastly, we come to the capturing round. And the way that the capturing round works is that each player who at the end of inflicting casualties still has presence in the territory, so Sparta no longer has presence there, and Corinth no longer has presence there, but Athens does, gets to choose 1 card from the opposing casualty pile, which they can capture. And so the Athenian player chooses to capture the Spartan general Leonidas. So the Athenian is actually bribing Leonidas to join Athens. and now the city is destroyed. The Corinthian city is destroyed. And so that is how this battle right here ended. So Sparta most certainly should have attacked with another military unit. What would have happened if Sparta had attacked with another military unit? Well, for one thing, they would have drawn another battle card, which was a miss, so that wouldn't have changed anything. They wouldn't have destroyed the Athenian player. But in losing their casualties, they would have only lost two military units instead of their general. Okay, so the Athenian player at the end would have bribed one of these military units to join their army. But in the capturing phase, Sparta, because they have presence left on the battlefield, would be able to capture one card from the defending casualty pile, and of course they would capture the city. And whenever you gain one of these action cards, then you gain it as if activated, and that would become a Spartan city. And after those 3 rounds, combat is over. This is a casualty, so it goes back to the deck. So Athens actually succeeded in bribing or capturing part of the Spartan army, but Sparta succeeded in capturing the Corinthian city. And Corinth didn't get anything out of this battle. So the way that you capture trade routes and cities is by coming in with a general or an admiral, which has many military units along with it, and having a high quality battle deck. So if somebody had a military tradition, then if they had drawn that one card, then they would have dealt 2 hits to their enemies. So if for example, Sparta had a military tradition and they drew military tradition, then they could deal 1 hit to Athens and 1 hit to Corinth and actually destroy that Athenian general, which would have been a great help to Sparta. So you want to have a high quality battle deck, and you want to have as many soldiers as you can in your army, and then you activate a city to attack a player in a territory which you share. Now, I think that there's only one last detail to point out for combat, and that is what happens if there's combat, if combat ensues where a player has say a general at sea or an admiral on land. Well, in such a case, combat ensues as normal between the admiral and the trade route. The trade routes fight just like cities fight, and they draw 1 battle card, just like any other unit in battle. But if all sea presence, if all legitimate sea presence is lost, then the general at sea also drowns, and so the card for the general and all of the military units belonging to it actually go into the defenders or the attackers' casualty pile, and they can be captured in the capture phase by anybody who still has presence in the territory at the end of the battle. Now the same goes for admirals on land. So if this Athenian player next round were to attack here, and Sparta were to lose all presence on land, they would lose their general and their city, then they would also lose their admiral. And so it is risky to move your admiral across land or your general across sea. Now it's important to point out that actually if you lose, if your general is moving across sea and then you move your admiral away, then the general drowns. So as long as you're moving your general across sea, then you need to keep your admiral there until your general can, in the next round, safely move to their destination. So your admiral is stuck until your general moves on. And the same would go as for if you're moving your admiral across a space occupied by your general. Your general can't move away until your admiral has passed through, or else you'll lose your admiral. Um, that's all the rules for combat, and now I'm just gonna summarize what do these cultural advantages do, and then I'll tell you. Then I'll go back over all the different rules so that you have an idea of how to actually play this game. So each cultural advantage is a little bit different, and basically what it does is it gives you a discount on a particular type of card. So at the beginning of the game, Sparta is going to start out with these two cultural advantages, and they add up to each other, and they give you discounts on cards. This symbol right here tells you that this cultural advantage gives you a discount off of citizens, and this symbol right here tells you that it gives you a discount off of military tradition. And I actually have three discounts off of military tradition. That means that normally military tradition costs 5. Here you can see the same symbol. Normally military tradition costs 5, but for Sparta, it only actually costs 2 coins. And so you're definitely going to want to use that your cultural advantages to get cards at a cheaper rate than any other player. So the Argive player also gets a discount off of military tradition, and they also get a discount off of walls, and so walls are free. By the way that walls work in combat is that if somebody wanted to attack me at Sparta, then I would have an extra card an extra unit in that battle. I would fight with a city and a wall, so I would draw 2 cards from my battle deck, and I could choose to lose my wall instead of my city. So walls are very, very useful. So each faction has different cultural advantages. Athens has also a discount off of military tradition, and also off of citizens, and also off of trade routes. So trade routes only cost 2 coins for the Athenian player. So that's why it is very advantageous to steal cultural advantages from other players. So at the beginning of this game, you're going to start with 2 citizens, 1 city, and 8 coins, unless you're playing as the yellow or the green player, in which case you're going to start with 8 coins, 1 city, and 2 cities and 1 citizen. And you're also going to start with some interesting cultural advantages, and each faction is going to start in a unique place on the map. And so Persia, for example, is going to have a particularly difficult job in using all of their advantages to be able to gain Greek-speaking territory, and that's going to be their particular challenge. Now, their cultural advantages are a little bit interesting. They're kind of unique. They start out with cultural advantage, a discount off of cities. So cities only cost 5 for the Persian player. And they also have this ability, which says capture 2 cards after battle. So during the capturing phase, Persians actually get to take 2 cards if they still have presence in the territory, whereas everybody else only gets to capture 1 card if they have presence left in the territory. So this is a huge advantage for gaining extra power while conquering the Greek-speaking world. So Persia is going to have to be militarily fierce, but they don't have any cultural advantages for military tradition, so that is a drawback. But basically, they can use the extra city that they have and this discount to quickly expand to all of this part of the map, and then have a much more powerful economy with which they can fuel their military and gain a foothold in the Greek-speaking world and possibly even dominate the Greek culture. But that's going to be very difficult, and they're likely going to need a Greek-speaking ally to be able to do that, just like in history. So each of these factions has some advantages and disadvantages, and you're going to want to expand your economy so that you can pay for your culture, and you're going to want to expand your military so that you can protect your economy. And at the same time as doing all of that, you're also going to want to foster good relationships with your neighbors, because if the other Greek city-states gang up against you, then it will be very difficult for you to actually defend yourself. And if you're the Persian player, it will also be very difficult to infiltrate the Greek world without a backstabbing ally from amongst the Greeks. And so you're going to want to time all of your moves very intelligently, because as I said, at the beginning of the game, a round is very quick, but towards the end of the game, the rounds become much longer because each player has more cities and they have more citizens to be able to activate, and so things are taking longer, and they also are getting greater income, so there are more different interesting things that you can do. And so you're going to want to be on your toes the entire time, watching what everybody else is doing and making sure that nobody is dominating the culture wheel more than you are. And if they are, then it may be that the only opportunity that you're going to have to actually stop them will be to attack them with a military. But one of the things in this game is that if you haven't invested in the military by the middle of the game, then it will be too late by the end of the game, no matter how powerful your economy is. Likewise, if you haven't invested in culture by the middle of the game, for example, if you don't have a single artist, then it will be very difficult to catch up culturally by the end of the game. And so you need to be building everything simultaneously and wisely. And the player who is able to do that the best and also has the best relationships with other players is probably going to be the winner of the game. So later on in the game, when many players have multiple philosophers, then we'll get to a point where all the schools have been established and there's just one left. Just one school left. And when that school has been established, then everybody knows that the end is near and they need to be activating their artists at full capacity in order to gain maximum cultural influence. Moving the cultural tokens as far as they can, particularly at expense of the players who have greater cultural influence, so that you can gain that lead. And by the end of the round, when everybody, after the 18th school has been established, has activated all of their cities and all of their citizens and have ended their actions, then the game will be over and will count whose culture tokens are furthest away from each other. Now, there's one detail that's also important to point out, and that is that what happens if you expand your culture token so far that you actually completely you actually start moving past your opponent's second culture token. So Sparta is increasing their cultural influence so much that they've actually sucked up all of Argive cultural influence. And in fact, there can be situations in the game where you can actually move past multiple players. And so the way that you do this is that you need to stack the culture tokens in such a way that the same colors are next to each other. So yellows are next to yellow, blue is next to blue. So this space is controlled by the Corinthian player, who's black. But if the Spartan player continues to move it, then they are decreasing Corinthian cultural influence. Argive and Athenian cultural influence, which is non-existent at this point, stays the same. So you need to invest in your economy, your military. You're going to need to make compromises. In this game, you're not going to be able to do all of the things that you want to do because you're going to be bumping up geographically against your enemies, and your interests are going to contradict the interests of the other players. You're going to want to have a balanced economy, a balanced military, and then you're going to want to go all into culture at the right time, somewhere between the middle and the end of the game, so that you don't become a threat too fast, but so that you also do end up having the most cultural influence by the end of the game. And those are all the rules. So I hope that you enjoy playing the game of Hellas.